A year really changes a lot. We're going to be talking Eagles training camp, and we're going to look back to this show last year to really get an idea how far this team has come in a single year. Joe Burrow goes down yesterday. Jalen Ramsey goes down yesterday. There's all these injuries piling up. And I want to see how the Eagles are capable of handling if one of these injuries happen to them. Got a special guest, Nick Faria from Philadelphia Sports Network. He'll be joining us today. Trending in the AM here on Philadelphia Sports Network starts in 30 seconds.
Fourth and goal.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM, right here on Philadelphia Sports Network. We're live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow, subscribe, turn those notifications on, retweet this show, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tap on the shoulder of the person in front of you at Wawa. Trending in the AM, the number one morning show in the Philadelphia area. It's the only show where your opinion actually matters. And as always, we are live on all these platforms, but if you're watching on Twitter, make sure you head over to the Facebook or YouTube page of Philadelphia Sports Network, the only place where your opinions that matter can be seen by me, the host, so we can put them up on the screen and talk about them. We got a jam-packed show today. We do. Lots to talk about from training camp of the Eagles, but also across the NFL. I got my man, Nick Faria. He writes for Philadelphia Sports Network. He's part of the Eagles team here at Philadelphia Sports Network. He was last on during the draft week, one of the highest viewed shows I've ever had. Great guy, really knows his football, and he also covers the Jets. He's also a credentialed Jets reporter, so I can't wait to talk about my disdain for the Jets in 2023 with him as well. But we got lots to talk about with him today. Joe Burrow had a scare yesterday, and we ended the show with the conversation we're going to start the show today with a little bit, and that's that Marcus Mariota being our backup quarterback. What if, something happened to Jalen Hurts? CMC, it was a crappy quarterback at championship. I rewatched it. Well, obviously, I have breaking news. You have breaking news. Are you going to tell us your real name? Are you going to put a profile picture next to the name, the Mad Chatter? Anyway, I am your host, Phil Stiefel, as always. As he says, Phil, in the thing. I am your host. Dude, guys, make sure you hit those like buttons, those share buttons. We've got so much to talk about. And it's funny. So, before we talk about anything specific, we're going to start with one simple thing here. How healthy this Eagles team stayed relatively last year. What is up, Drew? How you doing? So I always look at my Facebook memories every day, especially now with a show, because I've been doing this show only since April here on Philadelphia Sports Network, but Trending in the AM started in like November of 2021, I think it was. Maybe even sooner than that. It's pushing 2 years. Trending in the AM. We'll just leave it at that. We're at 22 months of doing this show. So I always like to look at the memories to kind of see what we talked about this day last year. And today's show last year was about the first day of Eagles training camp last year. And it said something along the lines of Eagles' first practice of the year happens. It lasts 58 minutes. Are the Eagles and Nick Sirianni not taking training camp seriously enough? Like, we were concerned as Eagles fans. I know you were. I know I was. That these light practices, not hitting, not putting the pads on, the old school way that we grew up. That's what we were used to. And we questioned it. We questioned it all the time. On this show, on other shows. There were a lot of questions about Nick Sirianni going into last year, just like Jalen Hurts. And we questioned his philosophies, his way of doing business, and how he did things. Yet, for the most part, we stayed relatively healthy. And obviously, his system worked because we made it to the Super Bowl last year. TMC. I'm still waiting for that breaking news, just so you know. It's it's interesting how quickly a year can change an opinion on somebody. Before I drop the news, I've been watching a lot of film, and I have some hard truths on this Eagles Friday. Uh-oh. Mad Chatter's going to stir the pot, it seems like, a little bit this morning. Yeah, you guys did. Look, we used to crush it, but we stayed healthy, and it seemed to work. And now you go around and you look at the NFL. Joe Burrow yesterday goes down. Massive scare. Massive scare. Turns out it's probably just a calf strain. A calf strain could be pretty painful. It could be a 5-6 week injury, possibly. He'll probably not play at all the rest of training camp. Maybe by the end he'll do some work, some practice with the guys. But you're not going to see much Joe Burrow. And they dodged a bullet there in Cincinnati. Obviously, if you lose your quarterback, no matter which team in the NFL you are, you're going to struggle. But when you're one of those elite teams with a Joe Burrow, a Jalen Hurts, a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, you lose that guy, not only are you screwed, you're really screwed. And they dodged a major, major, major bullet. And it's something that scares me. And the conversation came up towards the end of the show yesterday about Marcus Mariota. And about Marcus Mariota being the backup this year over Gardner Minshew. And was that the right decision from Howie Roseman to make that selection? Miles Sanders was very valuable last year. Absolutely. We've been over this a ton, Mad Chatter, on this show. One of the most underrated players on this team last year. I don't know about the Marcus Mariota thing still. You guys brought it up. Yeah, I hope that's not the news either, Drew. There better be. Burrow is a fraud. Wow. Well, Mad Chatter is really ready to stir the pot this morning, big time. Really, really ready to stir that pot massively today. I'm not sure how I feel about that. We might have to put him in a timeout mode or something because he's ready to stir that pot. Not sure how that makes me feel today. But anyway, when the Joe Burrow situation happens and he goes down like that, it's definitely scary. It's definitely something that worries Eagles fans. The breaking news. Well, of course they're better. We all knew that. We did. That's not breaking news. All right. Let me get my special guest. Join us on the I have no sponsor hotline. Nick Faria. Now before I put him on, I lied a little bit on Twitter yesterday. I said it was the highest viewed show ever in the history of the show. I did some digging. It was the second highest viewed show. So it wasn't the highest viewed show. Nick Faria from Philadelphia Sports Network, part of the Eagles team. What is up, my man? How you doing today?
How you doing? And I still say to this day, the reason why the show was voted so high was because a certain reporter was saying Jalen Carter was going to slide, and the path for him to get to Philadelphia was very, very easy.
Yeah,
That's all I'm going to say.
You nailed it. And we have been so excited about the early overreaction from the first day of reports of Jalen Carter. And we're going to talk about Jalen Carter a lot today with you on the show here. I'm sure everybody's hyped and always ready to talk Jalen Carter on this show. And we've got lots I want to dive in and get your opinions on, including the Jets, who you do cover the Jets for New York, for a New York site as well. And I'm a very hater I guess is the word when it comes to the Jets. I got the under 6.5 wins for the Jets this year. So
really?
Oh my God. Yeah. Just because I hate them. I'm just not an Aaron Rodgers fan. So
what have the Jets done to the Eagles in their time?
They hired Aaron Rodgers. They traded their own. It's the Aaron Rodgers situation. It's 100% the Aaron Rodgers situation. We'll get to that. But yesterday, news on Twitter, Jalen Ramsey and Joe Burrow, they go down. Now, they don't seem to be super long, term injuries, especially the Joe Burrow calf strain. He probably will be ready by week 1. Most likely. We'll find out more today. Maybe he misses a game. But at the end of the show yesterday, Nick, we spent a lot of time talking about Marcus Mariota and whether he was an upgrade, a downgrade, or the same from Gardner Minshew. And it was literally the last second of the show, so we didn't dive in. I spent a lot of my day at work yesterday thinking about that. and then you see the Joe Burrow news. And it got me like really thinking, like, is Marcus Mariota really an upgrade over Gardner Minshew? And Kyle's already saying Mariota's a very good backup quarterback.
Look,
I don't know. He seems more similar to Jalen Hurts' skill set. But why is Jalen Hurts the winner that he is? It's his skill set, but it's also the intangibles. And Gardner Minshew has those intangibles. What are your thoughts on this whole Minshew versus Mariota? God forbid anything happens to Jalen Hurts, the situation there.
And first off, let's also say that, knock on wood, Jalen Hurts is healthy for an entire season,
yes.
And you don't ever have to ask this question. Mm-hmm. But if you do, because as history dictates, scrambling quarterbacks do get hurt inevitably because of their running style and how often they're used in the pass and running game. But to compare Gardner Minshew and to compare Marcus Mariota, you mentioned it before, it's all about schematics. They brought in Mariota to keep the offensive system similar to what Jalen Hurts is and what Jalen Hurts does for the offense. They are not going to have a different offensive system like they had Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. They had two different ones, one for Foles, and then Wentz refused to play in that offensive system. That's not going to happen this time. So Mariota is a very deficient passer. And what I mean is he's got a very long release. He doesn't have the strongest arm. And both of those have been sort of highlighted over the last few years because the teams he's been on haven't really been very strong quarterback-friendly places. So when you have a situation like that, you're kind of screwed as a quarterback because you go and you hammer into what you already know, and you become deficient in the things you were already not exactly great at. Gardner Minshew going to Indianapolis, I think he's in a better situation to succeed here and there to compete for the starting role as a backup as opposed to Mariota, because the Eagles have to break down Mariota to the studs in order to get quality quarterback play from him. And it's not to say the Eagles coaching staff is bad. That's not what I'm saying. But to break a quarterback down takes time. It takes multiple off seasons to do that. Get him working with the right footwork. Get him working with the right, techniques in terms of release, in terms of arm strength, all that different stuff. When you add all that together, this season may not be the year that Mariota becomes a helpful backup, if you will. But again, if Hurts is healthy for a full season, it doesn't freaking matter.
Right. And then this is all like, the what if. We did a whole show about what ifs a few weeks ago, what ifs of the past, This is a what if of the future. Like, God forbid something happened to Jalen Hurts. But you look at it, Marcus Mariota. Gardner Minshew was the quarterback here for 2 years as the backup. He was 1-3. But at least he inspired. He led by example. Like, you didn't have a drop off in the leadership. Like the players believed they had a chance. Marcus Mariota's personality, like, he might have a similar skill set on the field to Jalen Hurts, but that personality is completely different. It's a 180 different personality there.
I'll say this: it's not like he's a cancer in the locker room. There's no information, no sources to confirm Mariota is not a good leader because he's won playoff games. Let's also remember that he has won multiple playoff games. That's something Gardner Minshew never did. The one thing Gardner did, though, that 1-3 record, some people can say that it's a little twisted, if you will. Because of how good he played against the Jets 2 years ago, how well he played in Dallas. But the real problem is he stunk in New Orleans, and Philadelphia is I remember what you did last for me role. It's why Carson Wentz is hated in this city, even though if you really think about it, he's the reason Philadelphia won the Super Bowl in 2017. They don't get to that spot without him. He was playing as an MVP caliber player. That's the problem here. It's what have you done for me at the last moment? It's why Foles is revered in this city, because people forget 2015. People forget that he was shipped out of town by Chip Kelly for Sam Bradford. It's all about, hey, you were the backup. You won us the Super Bowl. You won another playoff game the next year. You are forever getting free drinks in the city of Philadelphia.
Without a shadow of a doubt, you're spot on all that. On the other side of the equation, though, because I don't want to make this about Carson Wentz, but do we get to the Super Bowl if he doesn't get healthy? or if he doesn't get hurt there and he stays healthy, that's another what if there.
Yes,
We don't know if he gets there. Yeah, I know. I agree. Mariota won one playoff, but shouldn't speculate on his leadership. Look, the only thing I know about his personality, I don't go into the rumors about his leadership. I'm just looking at that personality. I saw like 3 or 5 minutes of that quarterback show on Netflix, and he's just a different character, different guy.
Yeah,
and he's not. I mean, Gardner Minshew's played 4 years in the NFL. Marcus Mariota's been around for 8-9 years now. I just worry, and I would have personally, even though he lost that last game against the Saints, if we needed to have a quarterback start for 3 or 4 games, I would have more faith in Gardner Minshew because he's got the rally the troops kind of mentality. He knows he's limited as a quarterback. I was comparing stats, and he's a worse quarterback, a worse thrower of the football than Marcus Mariota. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But he's in a team like this with his super talented. I think he can rally the troops better. He can tread water better than Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, to me, is a guy that if the going gets tough, he's like a turtle. He goes into his shell.
The other piece to that, though, and I preface this in every football conversation I have this early in, it's the first 2 days of camp.
Right.
Mariota's struggles day one, which are well documented. He was picked off on a terrible throw. He fumbled the football, which should never happen in a practice setting. But it is still day one. Nick Foles had a lot of problems when he was in camp as the backup to Wentz in those early days. And I'm not saying Mariota is going to come in and win the Super Bowl. What I am saying is it's important to temper expectations this early.
Yeah, and just so you know, I'm not bringing this Marcus Mariota conversation up because he had a bad day one. That is not why. This was brought up by the commenters yesterday at the end of the show. And we touched on his interception fumble, but that was more when we were talking about the linebackers and the defense. That's why we touched on Mariota at first. But this is more because of the Joe Burrow situation. Yeah. Obviously, I say it all the time, Nick, is that any of the 32 teams, you lose your starting quarterback for a long period of time, you're going to struggle, whether you're the best team or the worst team. You don't want to do that. But Howie Roseman has shown to put a lot of value in that backup position over the years, and rightfully so. The thing is, did he put the right value? There were other names out there. You could have brought back the guy you knew. Nicky Sixpacks is still out there, free agent too. Not that I'm suggesting that. I'm not suggesting that. I just worry that if the going gets tough and something happens and you got to throw Marcus Mariota out there, that maybe he's just not the best bet.
Well, the other piece is this. If you were to even think about bringing Nick Foles back, you have a lot of problems on your hands because Jalen Hurts is beloved in this city. His performance on February 12th is one of the greatest performances in a loss ever seen in NFL playoff history. Mm-hmm. If you bring Nick Foles into this conversation, the minute they have a bad game or a bad stretch, there's going to be riots for him. And listen, he's going to have his number retired eventually. Jeffrey Lurie already said that. But you cannot, after paying Jalen Hurts what you paid him, you cannot create a quarterback controversy. And it wouldn't even be a controversy because Hurts is the franchise quarterback. Yeah. You've paid him as a franchise quarterback. But every talking news outlet would question what the Eagles were doing if they brought in Nick Foles. It would be a disaster upon epic proportions.
I love Kyle's comment here. Mariota's never played with the weapons and the line that the Eagles have, and the running back, trio, quadruple, group 5, whatever that is. He's never had this type of offense. So it's a great point by Kyle there for sure. And then obviously, as we were saying, Nick Foles. Other people are saying Nick Foles. Look, what do we got here? Mariota is a backup. He's in the part of his career. Minshew wants the opportunity. That is another reason why Minshew left, is because he did want the opportunity to start for sure. But it all comes down to, we just better hope that nothing happens to Jalen Hurts. You know what I mean? Knock on wood, pray to whatever God you got out there. I start the show, Nick, off talking about it. I always look at my Facebook memories. And all my Facebook memories, there's always this show from last year or 2 years ago and what the topics were.
Yeah.
And this exact date, I was crushing. It was the day after the first practice. They ran a 58-minute first practice. And the show topic was, is Nick Sirianni taking it not seriously enough? Now we see after a full year of it this process, that this style of, it's not a conservative practice. It's a very intense 50, 60, 65-minute practice. They do a lot of work in the film room and in the gym and stuff like that as well. I think Nick Sirianni has started a trend that might be the trend that goes forward in the NFL as you see more people like Joe Burrow go down, Jalen Ramsey go down. There were some other injuries early in camp across the NFL as well. You're going to start seeing more teams take a less practice approach and just have a more intense hour practice every so often.
Compare it kind of to baseball. And it's crazy that I say this, but compare it to baseball, where a team that gets to the World Series and either wins or loses usually starts out the next season very slowly because of the fact that the arms in their rotation, whether it's the rotation or the bullpen, they're just worn down. They're exhausted. They played longer than anybody else in the league last year, and it takes them a little bit longer to get acclimated to the season and get acclimated. It's very similar here. The Eagles didn't really have many OTAs. They actually started the latest out of any team outside of the Cincinnati Bengals, and they had the fewest practices. They didn't have a mandatory camp. It was all voluntary, and that is because of the fact that they played longer than any other franchise outside of the Kansas City Chiefs last year. So when you add all that together, it kind of tells you, yes, this team is getting younger in key positions, as they should have been. But a lot of those aging veterans, what's the purpose of camp? What's the purpose of Jason Kelce going out there and taking 20 snaps with the starting offensive line in voluntary camp in order to prepare him for a regular season that he's already an all-pro in? He steps on the field week one. He's the best center.
I mean, that's the thing. Joe Burrow, if he misses the next 6 weeks, week one, he could step out there and he won't miss a beat.
It won't matter.
Mad chatter. I got to tell you, man, you're almost you're trying to stir the pot way too much today. For Joe Burrow, it's not a problem, my man. I don't even know what that. I don't think there is a surfer formula. I don't even know what that means. What's up, Eric? Good morning. It's interesting, and you mentioned Jason Kelce. We'll transition to the offensive line. Get your thoughts on the offensive line. Obviously, we draft Tyler Steen in the second round.
Yep.
After the great first round we have, then there's Tyler Steen. But Cam Jurgens, day one, was the right guard. And you talk about how Jason Kelce isn't going to practice a lot, and he's not going to practice. He doesn't practice all year. Who got all the snaps last year in practice? When Jason Kelce was sitting.
Yeah.
Cam Jurgens getting prepped to take over that role at some point in his career. And I still worry a little bit that those reps now are going elsewhere. And he still is the guy of the future. You know what I mean? So now he's learning two positions. Yeah, gives you more flexibility. Wouldn't it be smarter, big picture, long term? I titled this show, "The Eagles Have Built a Potential Dynasty on Their Hands Here." Wouldn't it be better to, Tyler Steen is more than capable of playing that role.
The thing that I'm concerned with at right guard, and I say concerned with because it's, again, day two of practice. I'm not going to overreact. But Cam Jurgens, is a big difference between when the Eagles drafted Cam Jurgens and the Eagles drafted Landon Dickerson. When Landon Dickerson was drafted, he was big, he was strong, and he could play any position on the offensive line outside of tackle. Right. He had the size to play guard. He had the hands to play guard, the length to play guard, but he had the athleticism to play center in this particular offense. And that's why he was able to seamlessly transition to left guard and has become an all-pro player. Jurgens isn't that kind of skill set. He's a little bit shorter. He's a little bit lighter. He's a true center, in my opinion. So I'm a little concerned when you get into the crux of the NFL season. They have one of the hardest schedules in football. When you play the Chiefs and you play the Bills and the Cowboys and the Giants, who all have very good interior tackles, what's going to happen when that undersized guard has to go up against some of these players? I think that's a chief concern. Steen, from everything I have heard, from everything I have seen, they are extremely high on Steen. And as long as Jeff Stoutland is employed as the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line coach, there is no reason to be concerned about any prospect. But if it comes down to camp, and if they say, listen, Steen's bigger, he's a better fit, and they're both kind of equal. Let's just start Steen right away and sit Juergens behind Kelsey for another year. So that way we have supreme depth at every position where we're not forced into a problem with an injury or with something happening at the last minute.
That's exactly how I would be doing it. It just seems, again, it's just one day, but that doesn't seem to be the way that the Eagles are handling it. And I'm not saying it's a mistake. I mean, the Eagles have proven that we shouldn't doubt them in any way. I mean, they seem to be making every move correctly. I don't think it's like some bold, crazy overreaction statement. They aren't a dynasty yet, but they're building a potential dynasty the way that we have all this depth at every single position. Marshawn wants to hear about Nakobe Dean. It was only one practice, Marshawn. So we really can't totally judge after one practice. But this is an issue because you cover the Jets practices.
Yeah.
You've been up at Jets training camp, for the last week or so, multiple times. And Nakobe Dean's name, and we touched on this a little bit yesterday, Marshawn. Nakobe Dean's name, I did not see mentioned in one tweet, one video, one article across Philadelphia Sports Network and all the other sites out there that I follow. Didn't see his name once. That could be really good because he's not making any mistakes. But it's also on the other side, he's not doing anything flashy on the first day that makes him stand out. I'm a huge Nakobe Dean fan, Nick. I don't know about you. What do you think? If you're a reporter covering camp, if you're not noticing a guy, is that good or bad?
It depends on the position. When you talk about the Mike linebacker, the leader of the defense, the guy with the green dot, the less you hear about him, the better, especially right now because they're playing 7-on-7s. It's 11-on-11. And they're not in pads. So if they're not in pads, a player of Dean's stature who, and remember, coming out of college, coming out of Georgia, what was his chief strength? His ability to read and the intelligence he has with off the charts. You can't read when you're not in pads, and there's really nothing to really focus on. When you looked at him for the Tennessee Titans game last year, when he played, what was it, a full quarter and a half because they had just blown the roof off of Tennessee, he had several plays where he was diagnosing plays very quickly. He was going sideline to sideline. All of that stuff was great. And you saw the potential was there for him to be a fantastic linebacker. To me, for him, as long as he was out of position, he didn't really look good here. He's a little bit late on his reads. As long as you don't hear that, smooth sailing.
Yeah, it's sometimes not hearing your name is definitely because we've heard name. I mean, we're all ready to overreact to Jack Driscoll getting beat how many times by Nolan Smith. We're ready to overreact to Marcus Mariota throwing an interception. We're ready to overreact to every negative thing we read.
How about we overreact to the positives?
I love overreacting to positives. Real quick, Duck, back on the Juergens conversation here. Duck is saying Juergens needs the pro reps. He needs to get used to NFL speeds. I think that's an interesting point. Whether you're putting him at right guard or leaving him as the backup center, getting him in there could help. And to Duck's point also, to kind of elaborate, I also feel like whoever they put at right guard, Juergens, Steen, hell, I know he had a bad day one, but I still think Jack Driscoll has like a 2% chance maybe. I mean, he was drafted as a guard as well.
He's a swing tackle. Jack Driscoll's a swing tackle, yeah.
But he's got some experience at guard, so he's fighting for that spot too. It doesn't matter who you put there. When you have Lane Johnson on your right-hand side and Jason Kelsey on your left-hand side, bookending you in your first ever start at right guard, the pressure isn't going to be on you too much.
Well, it's kind of like you sit there and say you got an all-pro on one side and a Hall of Famer on the other, and you've got our Lord and Savior Jeff Stoutland looking over you and blessing you every play. I mean, it's a great situation. It's why a lot of offensive linemen, especially when they're drafted, are so excited when they get drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles because I am going to the one place where the offensive line coach is going to tailor my skill set to what they need to be.
I always say that the only reason why Andre Dillard got a 3-year contract from the Tennessee Titans, he barely was on the field last year. He got it because he just spent – the Titans are like, oh, well, this guy just learned from Jeff Stoutland. I'm sure there's some talent there. You know what I mean? That's why he got paid.
The other thing is Dillard wasn't a bad player. He wasn't bad at left tackle. When he was playing his primary position, he was very, very good. The difference is Jordan Mailata is a top 5 tackle in the NFL. Andre Dillard is top 10. Yeah. Think about that. For the last 2 seasons, the Eagles have had 3 top 10 tackles in the NFL if you include Lane Johnson. That is insane. And what if it was a 7th-round pick?
I don't doubt you. Tyrone, great point. It's also the schedule. We got an easier schedule, so whoever you put at right guard or safety or linebacker, because there are a lot of positions with even as deep as this team is, there are some questions on this team. The schedule is easier in the beginning. You can ease these guys into their roles so that when we get to week 9, 10, 11, 12, when we're in the crux of the schedule, these guys have plenty of time to prep to be ready for that tough stretch. What were you going to say?
If I could, and I'm going to try and pull a Brian Windhorst here and pose a question for our viewers and for you, Phil.
I'm not used to having the questions asked to me. I'm a little nervous.
The Philadelphia Eagles yesterday restructured Derek Barnett's contract.
Love it.
Cut his salary down, saved, $3-4 million, whatever it was. Why would they do that? Why would they restructure the contract of a player that may not even make the roster this year?
Well, he is making the roster.
But in theory, there's no guarantee he does because the Eagles have supreme depth at a lot of these positions. Why would Howie Roseman go to him and say, I want you to take a pay cut or a restructured deal? We know their needs at linebacker and safety are very apparent. It's not so much that safety position is bad. Terrell Edmonds and Reed Blankenship deserve the opportunity to show that they can play. Both of them have had very good starting experience. And at linebacker, you have Christian Ellis and Nicholas Morrow. Ellis has been fantastic, but Morrow really hasn't really stood out. There's a linebacker out there, plays kind of like that outside linebacker position. He's still a free agent. Why not take a flyer on him with the cap space?
Which linebacker are you talking about?
Quan Alexander.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of linebackers out there. See, you're bringing up this, this restructuring, and either A, it's clearing up cap space to bring in a free agent. It's making his contract more attractable, maybe to a team in a trade possibility. Maybe it's there's a lot of things.
For teams that need pass rushing help, like a team down south and southwest in Arizona, who, if the safety isn't happy, I know he just agreed to a extension.
Does not mean he's staying either. So there's a lot. I'm a Derek Barnett fan. First off, Nick, I think Derek Barnett gets a bad rap. Everybody remembers Brandon Graham stripping the sack. Nobody remembers Derek Barnett recovering the fumble. Okay, nobody remembers that. Nobody gives him credit for that. He was there for it.
It is 8:45 in the morning. I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you. Of all the players who I have had zero patience for, I mean, I have sat through Nelson Aguilar dropping every single pass known to existence. I have seen Marcus Smith never touch the football field. I am done with the Derek Barnett excuses. I am done with the defensive Derek Barnett. He is just incompetent on so many levels. And I understand Philly needs depth. You really want depth and all that. He has plenty of skill. He's coming off an injury. There's no reason to let him walk. This guy, every freaking game, has 2 penalties where you have to ask yourself, is this man okay, or should he be brought to the asylum? It doesn't make sense. He does it every game. I'm so sick of it. I never liked that they brought him back in the first place. I can't stand the fact that they took their opportunity to bring him back. And now you're telling me that you think he gets a bad rap because he recovered a fumble. No.
Hold on. First off, let's reset here. We're 35 minutes in the show. I've completely made my guest lose his shit this morning. Let's like this video for Nick. And we only got 11 likes on this video on YouTube, 4 on Facebook. Likes equal Nick smiling. Okay? I think that his bad rap is a lot of his penalties are reputation penalties. If he's near the quarterback, I think you can't tell me that every one of his penalties are legit penalties.
I'm not saying all of them are.
And that's the problem. You're saying he gets 2 bad penalties a game. Well, 1.5 of those penalties aren't real penalties. They're just called because it's Derek Barnett.
Hold on. The 1.5. What about the first 10 where he ran into Tom Brady for no.
Oh my God, that first
reason.
penalty against Tom Brady was not a penalty.
Well, so
that was a Tom Brady penalty. That was because they protect Tom Brady.
Of the last 5 years, which of the Eagles has jumped off offsides the most?
Probably Derek Barnett.
It's Derek Barnett. He hasn't played. He didn't play last year, and it's still Derek Barnett.
I think that was a rhetorical question there for sure. Let's run through some comments here real quick. Howie should back up the Brinks truck for Stoutland U. Hey, you know, the Hall of Fame should already give Stoutland U his own wing in the Hall of Fame, not just a jacket, his own wing. If you have 2 walls and fence in the middle, where would you go to get the house? I would go after Steen, or whoever the guard is.
Sure.
Let's see. Yeah, it makes sense. Go ahead.
I would say, and I understand that problem of whoever's the starting guard this year is going to have a target on his back. And I agree. Then there comes the question of if you're Philadelphia and you have a weakness at guard, and I don't even want to say it's a weakness because these are 2 young players that both have a boatload of potential. If you have 2 of those kind of guys, why would you what's the concern when Stoutland's the coach? Because Stoutland, because he's not just the offensive line coach anymore. Mm-hmm. He's the run game coordinator. He helps call plays. He helps design plays. If he feels that his guards aren't up to snuff, it's not that he'll just pull them for somebody else. He'll sit there and devise the offensive scheme to the success of the offense, to their skill set. So even that I'm not really concerned about because it's Jeff Stoutland.
Marshawn thinks you actually sound like One Horse too. We're really backed up on comments here. So Drew, I said Dillard and Miles Sanders were going to be big losses this offseason. So
not anymore.
Not anymore. But when we initially lost him before we filled out that running back room, I was concerned for sure.
That running back room is the best they've ever had.
I want to get your opinions on that. They want the money available to get another piece. Absolutely. That's all it is. There is going to be another move made without a shadow of a doubt. And they're saving money because you never know if somebody goes down in camp. So you got to always have that flexibility if something happens.
And they also have to pay. They also have to pay Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson after this season. And both of them are getting long-term extensions. I would be stunned if Philadelphia lets either one walk.
Mm-hmm. The Buddha extension, man, Cheddar, does not mean he stays in Arizona at all. You could still trade him. This is not like the NBA. When you sign an extension, then you're held for I forget what the time. Like if whoever signs this offseason or extends this offseason, they can't be traded till January. It's not like that in the NBA. So, and man, I'll get back to your Kelly Green comment in a few moments. I was thinking for trade, not bringing a player. They didn't save that much cap with that move. Yeah, it was like $1 million. That's about it. Phil likes flag penalties. Yeah, no, I don't. I think he's about to throw a flag and a penalty on me for saying that.
My heart is I have chest pains now because of Derek Barnett. Just thinking of Derek Barnett.
Newly married man. You're not going to be married for long after this. Congratulations, by the way, on the wedding.
Thank you.
I hope the honeymoon phase is still going on for you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, we went to Greece. It was a great time.
I saw those things. That's fantastic.
What
part of Greece were you guys in?
We went to the capital. We went to Athens and then Santorini and Crete.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what, man.
I've been to all those places, man. It's fantastic.
If I can give a quick story on this.
Absolutely.
My wife, actually, very funny enough, I have to say wife now. I keep messing it up.
I was going to cut you off and say, doesn't that sound weird saying that?
She's always someone who wants to go out and do things. It's not so much that she's a part of it, she always wants to be doing something, which is very, very commendable. I, however, am a lazy asshole. I don't really want to do anything. When I'm home, I just kind of want to sit down, watch TV, and take a nap. So what she did, and she did this beautifully. She balanced out our honeymoon trip. Where the first trip we went to Santorini and we walked everywhere. We walked to a winery. We took a 3-hour hike to Ia on the other side of the island. We basically walked the entire length of Santorini's island. Can't do that in Crete because Crete apparently is the size of Puerto Rico, according to her. So in Crete, we booked a resort, and I may have moved 5 steps the entire time I was in Crete. I sat down at a beach. I sat on the water, and I didn't move. It was beautiful.
I love it. Santorini's got some great wineries and stuff like that for sure.
Is, yeah.
My wife's still jealous when we took a cruise to the Mediterranean. We stopped in all those places, and I wouldn't let her take the donkey ride up to the top of the cliff. I made her get in the tram car because I'm like, I'm not riding on the back of an ass for 30 minutes, up that hill. Drew, it's odd. I think 12 minutes. Okay, so let's try to roll through some more of these comments here. Why not have Nolan play the weak side? We're going to get into Nolan Smith here in a second for sure. That way we can have a 5-man line. I love the idea of a line where you have Fletcher Cox or Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Reddick, and Nolan Smith. All 5 of those guys out at the same time. Yeah, Judd. You haven't changed your profile picture back. Yeah, I love that you left it that way. My man Judd changed his profile picture mid-show yesterday. That man is stressed out. Yes, I've stressed Nick out massively. Phil, he got you against the ropes. Look, I let the guests win. If I don't let the guests win the argument, Mad Chatter, they'll never come back on the show.
I have no problem losing an argument. The problem is I have spent 10, 15 years in football debates, and quite frankly, I don't lose many. When it comes to football, I don't lose many.
Sanders had 1 fumble last year, I believe. So
well, it's not so much that Miles Sanders had, and thank you, Doc, again for the congratulations. It's not so much that Miles Sanders was bad. He wasn't bad. He had a career year. He was very, very good. But let's be quite honest here. Do you want Miles Sanders getting 300 carries and having to pay him $7 million, or do you want DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott all for the cheap price of $5 million?
Yeah. So how do you see this running? Because there's 5 running backs. Okay, you got them. You got Trey Sermon. You got Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell.
Beautiful thing.
You got all these guys. And as Nick Sirianni said before the first practice, and as we saw the reporters report, shout out to Brian Cameron, who's going to be repping Philadelphia Sports Network at training camp today. Finally, credentials. I don't know if anybody knows this. We haven't gotten Eagles credentials before. I come along and join.
We did.
Oh, you did? I thought this was the first time. In the comments, I thought, look, he had to fight for these credentials.
Well, yeah, it was a long fight.
A long fight to get these credentials. I joined Philadelphia Sports Network and start hosting this show, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's got the credentials. I don't know.
Forgetting also, Phil, who was the first man to go on site for the Philly Sports Network at an Eagles game?
I don't know. Was that you?
Yes, it was.
Well, there you go. So right here, this is the reason why the Eagles are giving us access right here. But anyway, with this running back room, and shout out, good luck. Brian Cameron's going to kick ass today.
He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's fantastic. So the question is, everybody's getting reps with the 1s. Everyone's getting reps with the 2. I am a huge Trey Sermon fan. I remember his time in college, what he's capable of. And I believe when Nick Sirianni hypes a player up, I don't think he just does that. I think it's because he's really got confidence in a player. And I look at these contracts that all 5 running backs have, and I see Rashad Penny's contract is very cuttable. And he's also a guy that wants reps, wants playing time. And even if he makes the team, he's going to be the 4th guy. Last year, we actually only carried 3 running backs out of training camp. How do you see the carries being distributed? Who is the odd man out? Who's the 2 odd men out if it only gets 2? How do you see this running back room shaking out?
A couple of days ago, I put out an article where we talked about the players under the most pressure, if you will, for heading into camp. And I had Rashad Penny on that list because with DeAndre Swift, with Boston Scott, and with Kenneth Gainwell, you have the trio you had last year. DeAndre Swift is a better pass catcher than Miles Sanders. He may not be as fast, but he's more physical. And I think that poses an interesting concern to teams. But so does Rashad Penny. His speed, his size offers a lot to help the Eagles offense. Mm-hmm. If I'm Philadelphia, the real question is, do you want Sermon or do you want Penny? Mm-hmm. And both of them are very cheap, so both of them aren't really going to cost a lot if they cut them. There's going to be minimal savings, minimum, cap penalties in between. Exactly. But when you look at everything together and you look at what the Eagles are trying to do, they're trying to emulate what 2017 was, where there was so much depth at every position. You don't want to keep all 5 running backs because then you have to sacrifice a position of depth. Do you cut an extra receiver? Do you cut an extra offensive lineman? If A.J. Brown goes down to an injury this year, Philadelphia doesn't really have the player to back him up. That's why they worked out N'Keal Harry a couple of days ago. So in my opinion, they're definitely keeping 4. There's one of them is going to be cut or put on the practice squad inevitably. And I think that guy's going to be Sermon. I think they like what they see with Rashad Penny. I think they look at it and say, even if he's hurt, it's okay because we can just stack him onto the IR and then let him sit there and recover while we add an extra receiver or we add an extra lineman. His injury concern goes away because of the addition of DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about with this whole, and we talk about how, like there's this rotation amongst it. I actually think DeAndre Swift is going to carry the ball a lot more than people realize. He's not going to carry it as much as Miles Sanders did, but it's not like he's going to get 10 carries. Gainwell's going to get 10 carries. Scott's going to get it's not like it's going to be a true, like, if you remember back when we had the Deuce Staley, Vaughn Hebron, Terrell Buckalter trio, it's not going to be like that. DeAndre Swift is still going to lead this backfield in touches, in my opinion. And with that, it kind of means that Rashad Penny's kind of the odd man out.
I wouldn't say he's going to lead the lead team in touches because I think the playoff run last year for Philly showed the coaches the skill set Kenneth Gainwell can bring.
Right.
And I think they want to use him as much as possible this season. And if they do, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Gainwell 1 with like 200 touches and DeAndre Swift with like 195. I think there's going to be a more even distribution of carries, specifically because they can. Swift has injury problems. He's had injury problems most of his career. And as Mark is saying, you're not using Boston Scott until week 10 when they play the Giants this year. Like, you don't need to use him until then.
I got a funny question for you on Boston Scott because I made this as just like a sly joke of a comment the other day. Then I thought about it. I'm like, is Boston Scott somebody that, like, if you tried to sneak him onto your practice squad, would anybody else try to pick him up? Like,
absolutely.
Boston Scott brings nothing to the table except for when you play the Giants. He's not a great kick returner. He's not a great running back. He's just a giant. That's it.
Hold on. He's a very good kick returner. The reason why Philadelphia last year, remember, special teams was awful, but there were very few moments when he was actually returning the ball that Philadelphia even had a chance. Almost every major breakaway on the kick return team last year came when Boston Scott was the returner. So very, very quickly, I'll put it that right there. With Scott, he's very shifty, very shifty. You even saw that in practice a couple of days ago. But think of it this way. You've beaten the Giants, 10, 11 straight times at home.
Right.
That record is going to end eventually. It's how life is. Records like this end. As long as you have Boston Scott on the team, you should feel confident going into games against the New York Giants.
You're going to win 2 games a year.
And more so, if you were to cut him, who do you think is going to be first on the line to say, we are having none of this anymore? We're bringing him in, and we're going to stash him away because I don't want to see him ever again.
Look, the only reason why I made that thought as a joke originally and brought it up again now is he was a free agent this offseason. And what did he get? $2 million from the Eagles? $1.5 million from the Eagles? Like, it's not like other teams were knocking down his door to say, come play for us.
Well, I believe he still had the restricted tag on him. So it was the chief negotiation from Philly. And I think he saw the market that the running back group had and said, hey, I'm going to stay in this Darren Sproles San Diego Chargers role where I'll have 6 touches a game, but I'll average 6 yards per touch. He's incredibly efficient. And I think, and you kind of saw in the Super Bowl as well, the Eagles' run game was awful, but the only one that really was getting any sort of push was Boston Scott because he was very good at just creating that little bit of space to give him a yard or 2 extra. And it tells me Philadelphia wants him. Philadelphia wants to keep him. They don't want him in the hands of the Giants at all. And for good reason. There's no reason to let him walk as long as Philadelphia needs a third down back.
More than that, Boston Scott is like Greg Ward as a punt returner, Mark. He's very safe.
No.
He's very safe. He's never going to fumble the ball. He's going to catch it all the time. He's a very safe, reliable guy. Running around big comes down to situations. I think that's very fair. And I thought this was a very interesting comparison. By the numbers, Rashad Penny is better than Nick Chubb. I mean, Nick Chubb is arguably one of the best running backs in football, but he stayed healthy. Rashad Penny just doesn't stay healthy. That's the problem for him.
All right, I hate to do this to you. I hate to do this to you, right?
Go for it.
But I want to do this. Last season, Boston Scott had 15 kick returns.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think his average was?
Well, it's better than I thought based on what you're saying.
It's just humor me.
Mark's going to defriend me on Facebook and delete my cell phone number and become your friend now because you're just backing him up. Mark hates when I say things and he disagrees. I don't know, 25.6 yard average return,
27.1. His longest was 66.
Well, that makes that average number go up because he had that 66. Take that 66 out, and it's 27.1 instead. I'm just kidding.
How many Eagle players have had 66-yard returns in the last decade?
I know. But can you really keep a player solely because they're a kicker? I mean, with the league's going with special teams. It can't be the reason why you keep somebody.
That's why Britton Covey made the team last year. He made the team. Yeah. He didn't play a single offensive down, and he was only used on special teams. If there's one player you keep solely for special teams, it's Boston Scott.
Okay. All right. I got you. All right. So, again, reset. We're training the AM. We got about 25 minutes left in the show. 15 likes on YouTube. We're up to 7 on Facebook. Make sure you pound likes equal the algorithm. Get more people involved in the show. We're trying to blow through these comments as quickly as we can. But I got to get to at least 2 more topics with Nick here. So we're going to transition back to defense because he was the one that said on this show several months ago, I think it was only like the second week that Trending in the AM was on Philadelphia Sports Network. Nick's on and says Jalen Carter is going to slide to those Eagles. And look, and now Jalen Carter is the talk at camp. Jalen Carter, we've talked about on this show a lot, this offseason, how it's hard for rookies to crack that rotation. There is going to be no struggle in someone like Jalen Carter being a very, very important part of this defense right away from day one because the guy's the real deal, is he not?
For all intents and purposes, he looks like. And I will say, if you look at Jalen Carter and the skill set he has, he could easily start day one, and I wouldn't be surprised if Desai says, hey, we're going to put you with Jordan Davis on the field, and we're going to let you two run it, and we'll have Fletch and Milton Williams on third down, rush the passer. Wouldn't surprise me one bit. As good as Jalen Carter was, though, I don't think he was the best Georgia defender on the field in that first practice, and that was Nolan Smith. From everything I have heard, Nolan Smith basically beat whoever was in front of him, including Lane Johnson.
The guy that hasn't given up a sack in 300 years.
And Nolan Smith took him and said, nope, not anymore. This guy, and the Eagles are going to have to give Hassan Reddick in the offseason a contract extension or a restructure at the very least. That conversation is going to get a lot harder to have because Nolan Smith plays his position. That is his natural spot. And if he dominates like this, let's say Hassan Reddick puts up 15, 16 sacks, just like he did last year, is a dynamic player, continues to show and continues to be a favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. But Nolan Smith puts up like 10 sacks.
I forget what the numbers are, but I was on another show and someone brought up the fact that rookies and their sack numbers are very low typically. It brings in the question, how do you crack that rotation with Reddick, with Derek Barnett? Well, not Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. It was like a Freudian slip there by saying Derek Barnett's name there. Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat. There are a lot of guys in that rotation, and I know he's that good. I mean, there were people mocking him in the top 10 to the Eagles, not at 30.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Say this, the other piece,
how does he get into that rotation, and who's the odd man out?
You know who's the odd man out outside of Derek Barnett and his ineptitude? It's Brandon Graham. And Philly fans are going to hate to say this, and they're going to hate me hearing this. He had, I think it was like 30% of the defensive snaps last year. That number could easily go down. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes down. He's very good against the run, very good, as a pass rusher. But if Nolan Smith comes in and he has like 3 sacks to start the season, and they're quick, like 1 in week 1, 2 in week 2, none in week 3, don't be surprised if the Eagles go to Brandon Graham and say, we're going to use you as a situational guy like we did Robert Quinn, where you don't really see the field anymore, and you're now being more of a coach on the field than anything else. I'm not saying he's going to get cut. That's not what I'm saying.
It's not what he's saying at all. Not at all.
But what I am saying is that snap count could decrease very, very quickly. And then it goes off into saying, well, if he's the third pass rusher instead of Graham, you can pay Hassan Reddick now because Nolan Smith has, 4 more years of team control. That gives you the flexibility to do that. Plus, the cap is going to skyrocket with the TV contract in a couple of years. So that also plays a part in it. You kind of look at all these things, but the outlier here, and this is the mistake Howie Roseman has made consistently throughout his career. When you have fan favorites and you have guys that fans want to stay in Philadelphia forever, he hangs on to them.
Yeah.
Way too long.
Yeah.
Way too long. It's what in Pittsburgh back in the 70s, when they had the 70s dynasty, they were that good. But it took them 5 years afterwards because they held on to Franco Harris too long. They held on to Mike Webster too long. Mike Webster, what happened to him was a travesty because he should never have gone back to play for Pittsburgh when DeMonte Dawson was drafted. You look at all those other players, they held on to those aging guys. And once the core had maxed out, they didn't reach the Super Bowl ever again. And I get Mark's comment of they never want.
I wanted to make sure I put that up there because that is part of it right there.
I get it. But let me ask you this. The mistake with Brian Dawkins, to me, wasn't that they let him walk. It was that they didn't have a plan to replace him. That was the problem.
Right
they
now,
threw in Sean Jones.
Completely different now.
Yeah, they threw in Sean Jones and said, well, this is it. If they threw in Malcolm Jenkins, and I know it wasn't going to happen, but if they threw in Malcolm Jenkins immediately after Dawkins left, and they said we're going to pencil him in at safety and we're going to let him grow, this is a moot point. There's no, this is a mistake. They shouldn't have done this. They let him go for someone younger. This is the NFL. This is a business. The mistake they made with Dawkins wasn't that they let him walk, is because they had no one to replace him. They have someone to replace Brandon Graham. They have someone to replace Fletcher Cox. That's why they took lesser deals to stay in Philadelphia, because they know they're not going to get a lot of playing time this year. They know they're not going to be focal points on the defense. But when the time comes where even if they want to play him a lot to start the season, and Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams all show they're ready to go.
Say Milton Williams' name. I'm going back up here to this earlier comment. I love Milton Williams. 8 sacks is a lot for Milton Williams, but man, Milton Williams is one of the most underrated guys on this defense. Out of the defensive front seven, whatever you want to call them, 9-man rotation, whatever. The most underrated man in that group is Milton Williams.
If he becomes a free agent this year, and I believe he would. No, he can be negotiated on a contract this year because he was in the Devontae Smith draft. Yeah. If he walks as a free agent, he's going to get a boatload of money because that potential as a pass rusher is insane. His numbers, and you look at, and I hate analytics in football. I despise them. I think it's a waste. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's the stupidest thing anyone could ever do. I hate analytics in football. But his pass rush win rate is among the elite in the NFL. His sack numbers for the snap totals he has are absurd for his position.
There was a stat, I forget which one it was. It had something to do with running the football or running game as well. He was 4th amongst defensive tackles last year based off of stat. It was Aaron Donald, 2 other guys, and Milton Williams.
And think of it this way. If cracking the joke here, Howie Roseman, that was the pick that Howie and Tom Donahue basically argued over on public television. Yeah. And Tom Donahue has been in the NFL for a very long time.
Very respected guy.
How stupid does he look? And I get it. Elaine McNeil is an excellent defensive player. Both picks could have been excellent. Both picks were very good for their respective teams. Mm-hmm. He looks to react like that to a pick that has clearly worked out. I mean, Jesus Christ, you look like a buffoon.
Yeah. Look, you're talking about the money aspect of it and all. And, I kind of titled the show before I knew where the show was going conversation today to the potential dynasty. I mean, you've got Milton Williams, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. You've got the future of this team for the next 4 or 5.
I think you might cut out. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to look at these comments while we wait for Phil to get back on. This guy hates analytics.
Hello?
Yes, can hear you now.
Oh. I have no idea what happened. Give me a minute there. What no? Test. I don't know why you can't hear me.
Now I can.
You can hear me?
Now I can.
I can't hear you. Give me a second. I don't know what happened there. Hold on.
Yeah, I agree, Doc. How we just cut him off. Just looking at these comments, how we just cut him off. Phil, I don't know sign language. This is pandemonium here on the show.
What the heck is going on here with my computer? God damn.
Taking a look at these comments, what we got at the match chat.
No
Guy
idea
hates
what's going
analytics.
No idea what is going on.
Did you try plugging it back in?
Test. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't know what the hell happened. My soundboard went dead for a second. And now I'm all tied up and twisted up in like a million different directions. Come on, Phil. I know. What an amateur. You know, it's because the guys on YouTube didn't drop the $500 super chat. I can't afford a better sound system here, you know? Anyway, sorry about that. Amateur hour here. I got to untangle this shit. I don't know what you're talking about there, but all right. That'll just have to do. We'll just go one ear. Where were we?
No, I was just talking about, who was it? Tom Donahue looking like a fool for the Milton Williams pick, because he's been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Milton Williams has been fantastic. All right, so we got about 10, 12 minutes left in the show. So I want to bring up something else here, because you also do cover the New York Football Jets a little bit. And everybody that watches this show on a regular basis knows that I have some inner hatred towards Aaron Rodgers, and I am not a fan of the way Aaron Rodgers handled himself this offseason and just in general. And, yeah, I got the Jets winning less than 7 games this year, because I think that New York Jets situation and the Aaron Rodgers situation is going to blow up. Yet then Aaron Rodgers goes yesterday and takes like a $100 million pay cut and decides to be, a team player for a change.
Here's the thing, and I'll say this as the specific reporter. What Rodgers did yesterday, and we could say, oh, he wasn't a good teammate, He took a $35 million pay cut. Yeah. It wasn't a restructure. It wasn't a void year, all that stuff. It was a $35 million pay cut. Tom Brady didn't even do that. And Tom Brady has historically taken less to help his team build in the long run. So, I mean, this Jets team, and I'll say this, as the offense continues to grow, and it takes some time with a new offensive coordinator, new system, it's going to take some time. No one is surprised by that. Mm-hmm. That defense looks terrific. That defense looks scary, like top 3 scary. Gardner and Reed are 2 elite corners. I think they're the only group that compares with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. And then you add in their pass rushers. If you think Philadelphia is loaded in terms of their pass rushers, this is the Jets. Mm-hmm. Quinn Williams, who right now is the best defensive tackle out of any of the 2 teams. Mm-hmm. It's just fair. 13 sacks last year was fantastic. Then you have Carl Lawson, mm-hmm. John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, first-round pick. He looks incredible this year. Another first-round pick in Will McDonald. Mm-hmm. Quentin Jefferson, Al Woods, mm-hmm. Solomon Thomas, and I'm missing someone else. But that's 8 pass rushers. Mm-hmm. That is 3 waves of defenders that you could throw at him.
Right.
That's insane.
But is Aaron Rodgers going to be a good teammate up there in New York? Because this is all coming like everything you say about their defense is right. I know their defense is great. I I mean, Aaron Rodgers was this close to retiring. And when I hear that about a player, I kind of that kind of like you have to go on a darkness retreat to think about maybe playing football again. To me, you're putting all your eggs as the Jets into Aaron Rodgers for the next 2 years instead of developing Zach Wilson or finding the next guy to develop or whatnot. You know what I mean? That is why I have such a problem is that the Jets organization, instead of seeing their process through, just said, after a year and a half, just said, screw it. We're just going to get Aaron Rodgers for 2 years. And then we'll deal with the pieces later.
It's a common misconception because in reality, the biggest mistake they made was playing Zach Wilson week 1 of his rookie year.
Oh, absolutely. Agree.
He was a guy that needed to sit, and they acknowledged that this offseason. Right. They acknowledged we should have sat him. We should have had a veteran presence to let him grow within the game.
Absolutely.
Because that's what
I think that's the case with 99% of top 5 picked quarterbacks in the NFL draft every single year.
They need time. And I think that's an important piece to that. So what they're doing is they're going back and saying, we are going to correct this. And it's going to be an overcorrection because we have brought in a future Hall of Fame quarterback, not just some wily veteran. The other piece of that, and this is kind of what extended their plans a little bit, the Jets rebuild under Joe Douglas was expected to be a 3 to 4 year thing. It was going to take time. They needed their quarterback. They needed the offensive line and all those different pieces to come up. What they didn't expect was their defense to become elite within 2 years. They didn't expect Garrett Wilson to be a perennial all-pro after year 1. They didn't expect Breece Hall to be good, as good as he is. The talent, what they wanted was the quarterback to grow with the team gradually together where it was even. Mm-hmm. But what happened was the entire talent on the roster has just skyrocketed.
Right.
So now it's uneven. Now they had to drag Zach Wilson along, mm-hmm. and he needed more time to develop. That's okay. Right. That's happened before in NFL history. So now they say, okay, we have a young team. How do we get to that point? How do we get to the quarterback level to match our talent? You bring in a Hall of Fame quarterback.
But here's another aspect I want to throw at it with you. I talk about this with all sports, with the Sixers, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Eagles, all teams. Whenever I'm talking sports, it's all about timing as well. They go all in with Aaron Rodgers. But in that, so we talk about the Eagles. I mean, they're clear and cut the favorite in the NFC. There is no one near. The 49ers are semi-close. The Cowboys are just a tick below that.
I'm worried about the Cowboys, but yes. Yeah.
I actually had said earlier this week, I think the Cowboys are the second best team in the NFC.
I would agree.
Not the East, in the NFC. I really, truly believe that. But in the AFC, you got the Chiefs. You got the Bills. You got the Bengals. You maybe got the Dolphins. You got the Ravens. Maybe there's 5 or 6 teams right there at or above where the Jets are, and they've just gone all in. So is the timing right for the Jets as well?
It is, because you kind of have to remember a few things. Look at these AFC teams. You're looking at them, Phil, as based on their quarterback.
I am.
But you're not looking at them based on the team. Last season, the Jets split the season series with the Buffalo Bills, considered by many to be a top 3 team in the AFC last year and this year. They're number 3. They split the season series with Zach Wilson at quarterback. Why? Because they were just a quarterback away. They could have easily handled the Bills all year last year if they had an average quarterback. Now they have an above average one. So already the talent level, because remember, a lot of these Jets players that are elite are on rookie deals.
Right.
Wilson, Sauce, Hall, all these guys are on rookie deals. So they don't have to worry about paying them this year. So you can add a Dalvin Cook or other veterans along the offensive line, and you don't have to spend that much money. So when you look at it from that perspective, the talent level compared to other teams in the AFC, outside of maybe the Chiefs, is overwhelming. They have the better defensive line outside of Kansas City. And then also you throw in, you talk about the main teams, you talk about the 5 teams. Mahomes is Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in football. Josh Allen, he's an injury away from decimating the Bills forever.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, we don't know how long his calf strain is going to hold him out, and he could very well be affected. But let's, for fairness, say, he's number 2. That's the number 2 team. We've already mentioned that. Tua Tagovailoa is 1 concussion away from retiring.
Yeah. Oh.
Lamar Jackson hasn't been healthy for 3 seasons. Justin Herbert hasn't won a playoff game. Trevor
Don't
Lawrence
started on Justin Herbert.
No, I'm looking through every quarterback you can list.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence, very good player. I think he's one of the more ascending quarterbacks in football. Most coaches, after winning the division in their first year with the new team, take a step back. That normally happens. You look at what happened with Chip Kelly in this first year. 10-6. The next year, 10-6 didn't make the playoffs because they had a collapse down the end of the season. That could have very well happen with Jacksonville. You have who else? Cleveland. No one knows what Deshaun Watson's going to look like. No one knows what the Patriots are going to look like. In reality, you look at the skill set for the Jets, and you can easily pencil them in as the third or fourth best team in the AFC.
Yeah, all right. I get what you're saying there, but I don't know. I think the timing. I think the whole situation with Aaron Rodgers. I just don't like Aaron Rodgers. I just don't. I can't get over my disdain for that man, his personality, and the way he conducts business.
And let me say,
maybe I agree with what you're saying, but on the flip side, I hope I'm right because I want to see it blow up in Aaron Rodgers' face.
Let me say this about Aaron Rodgers. Whatever he was in Green Bay, all indications are he's not in New York. And I think that's a fundamental change because this guy looks happy.
Okay.
It's not he doesn't look like he's coming into work. He doesn't look like it's okay, another season, here we go. Yeah. He looks happy.
He wants to be there.
Excited. And I think for the first time in a few years, he looks exactly what you said. He looks excited to be playing football.
Well, you're there covering them, in camp. So you see it more than I do. So maybe I'm wrong, and I hope I'm not, but we'll see. Me and you mentioned the Cowboys being the second best team, there was like a million comments came rolling in about people not happy with us saying that. We only got about 4 minutes left in the show. Still only 15 likes on YouTube, 9 now on Facebook, guys. Hit that like button. There's no super chat, so there's no overtime today. Show's over in 4 or 5 minutes. But Nick, explain to the people. Dallas is actually better. I know what Mark said about Jerry Jones and McCarthy. I agree. Dak Prescott's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. If he was on any team other than the Cowboys, he would have a different reputation around the NFL amongst fans.
No. I disagree with that. I disagree with that. Only because you look at the playoff losses he has had, and he has been a chief reason for those losses.
I'm not calling him a top 5 quarterback or anything like that.
And compare him to Donovan McNabb, because a lot of people are comparing him to McNabb because he gets to the playoffs a lot. McNabb won playoff games. What was it, 9, 10 in his overall career? Like, he lost in the conference title. There's a big difference between losing in the conference title and losing in the wild card round. There's a massive difference. McNabb was always able to win. I'm going to start my breakdown of the Cowboys a little bit differently because Dak made this, I'm going to call it what it is. It was a stupid guarantee where he's like, I'm going to throw less than 10 interceptions this year. I guarantee it.
He didn't say that. He said he's not going to throw 10 interceptions. He never used the word less. So he might throw more than 10.
I'm not going to throw – so be it. I'm not going to throw 10 interceptions this year. Okay. Who gives a shit? You're a quarterback. Throw less than 10 interceptions. No shit you don't want to throw interceptions. It was the dumbest thing. It was so dumb that Skip Bayless even goes, yeah, isn't that what you're supposed to be working on? All jokes aside, this guy goes into practice for the first 2 days, and how many interceptions has he thrown? 3.
Well, one was tipped off the wide receiver's hand.
How it always happens with him. There's one's tipped, one's underthrown. The receiver looked at a butterfly on the opposite side of the field and wasn't paying attention.
Isn't some of Dak's problems the culture and the organization and the people making the decisions? You got one of the best tackles in football holding out, but you're paying, the cornerback instead, who isn't holding out at this moment. He's always paying too much money to, little overweight Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard and like the construction and the culture and the organization. It makes me even when I look at the Cowboys organization as a whole, it just makes me count my blessings being an Eagles fan and having Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman at the top of the the charts there.
There are many reasons why it's not so much that I fear the Cowboys, but I have trepidation towards playing them this year. And it's because Micah Parsons is an excellent, no doubt about it. He's a top 5 defensive player in football right now. Trevon Diggs, a lot of people don't like him. They think he gets beat a lot. I can agree with that, but so did Lito Shepherd and Asante Samuel at times. He's a ball hawk.
Yeah.
That defense is an elite defense, a top 5 defense, just like Philadelphia's. They may be built differently because they value their linebackers a lot more than Philadelphia, and they don't value the defensive tackles as much. But Philadelphia, if there's one team that matches and can match toe-to-toe with them in the NFC, it's the Cowboys. Because as hilarious as Dak Prescott has been, he's probably the second best quarterback in the NFC. You can throw in Stafford, Cousins, Jared Goff. All that is fine. But I think Prescott's probably the closest to Jalen Hurts right now. And you look at a team like San Francisco, and the barometer between Hurts and the 49er quarterbacks is so massive. And they have fundamental points where Philadelphia can attack the 49ers. They can't really do that with the Cowboys. It's more about if the offensive line plays well, they'll win. And if they don't, they're going to lose. That's kind of what it just comes down to. So that's kind of where I say they're the one team that I'm not concerned, but have slight issues.
I think you can make an argument that the Eagles are obviously one, but you can have the argument whether it's the 49ers or Cowboys as the second best team in the NFC. That's we're not trying to put them on the same level as the Eagles. We're putting them in the same class as the 49ers. This is actually a very interesting comment. This kind of goes, if you put Dak with the 49ers would be an even better team. That's the thing.
No, they would. Here's why. Because people keep forgetting this. The 49ers, great team, a lot of great coach, a lot of great stuff. They're very ingenious in how they run their offensive system. They didn't lose the NFC title game because they didn't have a quarterback. They lost the title game because their head coach got 2 of their quarterbacks killed. You blocked the 3rd best pass rusher in football with a tight end, and you're going to tell me that Dak Prescott would
any tight end, like the backup tight end,
Jedi master, and say, "I see the edge rusher coming at me with the tight end. I'm going to use the force to pretend he's not there and make the throw."
It's I'm not going to disagree. Look, we didn't get
Kyle
any
Shanahan, much like Sean McVay, are 2 very smart offensive coaches that get way too much credit because they try to outsmart everyone on the field. And sometimes, in key moments, it blows up in their face.
All right, so we didn't get any super chats, but we're already into overtime here today. So I'm going to end this with this. I want a 2-minute or less answer. Obviously, something big is dropping on July 31st. Kelly Green. And I think it is the most overrated thing in the history of Eagles football.
Dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Nick, are you a Sixers fan, Nick?
I follow basketball, not really.
Okay. And then somebody shared a picture of the Allen Iverson black Sixers jerseys, from back in 2001, what he was wearing when he stepped over Ty Lue. Someone posted a picture of that, like the Sixers should bring it back. And I put out hot take number 1000.4 for the day yesterday, that those black Sixers jerseys, throwbacks, are better than the Kelly Green throwbacks. I hate the Kelly Green. The Eagles are literally going to make half the national debt in money on Kelly Green, and I'm not going to spend a single penny on it.
Put it this way, and this will be my last point because I do have to jump because I have work.
I'm sure somebody in the other room is waiting for me to start the car so he can leave.
Yeah, my wife is already pissed at me. Understandable. From 1960 to 1997, I believe, is when they put out the Midnight Green. Mm-hmm. They were in Kelly Green. Can anyone tell me what their record was in the playoffs, or what their record was?
Very good.
They were absolute crap. Why would I want a jersey from an era of crap when the jersey and the logo is already perfect? Stop messing with perfection.
Look,
it's the dumbest thing. And people are like, well, it's Randall Cunningham. It's like my childhood. How many playoff games did Randall Cunningham win? How many games did Randall Cunningham in the postseason win when he was the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles? I argue this point with every staff member in PSN. He is the most overrated athlete in Philadelphia because Donovan McNabb gets absolutely ripped to shreds for losing in the conference title game. And Randall Cunningham goes over and says, well, I was the ultimate weapon. I only won 1 playoff game, but at least the fans love me because I won an MVP, not from the Associated Press, but because the offensive coaching staff really loved me.
Oh, my God. I love it.
The Kelly Green argument.
I love it. All right, trending in the AM right here on Philadelphia Sports Network. Again, hit that like button, hit that share button, follow button, all social media platforms. This is my man Nick Faria here at Nick_Faria1720. You got anything coming out this weekend?
Nah, nothing yet. Nothing yet. Not right now. But just follow me on Twitter if you want. Enjoy the discourse.
Yeah. And enjoy another man that thinks like me on the Kelly Green. We'll be back Monday, Overreaction Monday, right here on Trending in the AM. For everybody here at Philadelphia Sports Network, have a great weekend. Stay cool. It's going to be hot, guys. We'll see you on Monday.